Here we are, 3 weeks into lockdown, and here's my first video since my triple hammy video, literally a couple of days before lockdown started. And what I thought I'd do, as we're all stuck in, is do some research videos so that you can do these from your armchair on your permissions and maybe gain some extra insights, maybe find some hotspots on maps and things when you do finally get back out. So the first video in my new series of research videos is on tithe maps and apportionments, an extremely important source of information and some of the most detailed maps around that you'll find for any area that predate the OS maps for most places and go back to the 1830s. So we'll have a look through what's available, how and where to find it, why it's useful, and go through it step by step. Prior to the 1830s, the church would receive goods from local landowners and tenant farmers and the like in the shape of goods. Bushel of wheat, cow here, sheep there, that sort of thing. In 1836, the government decided that they needed to change that, so they created the tithe system from the land and a survey of that land that ran from sort of 1836 through to 1850-ish. It covered most of England and Wales. Some 12,000 districts were mapped and apportionment documents created. These are a great research resource because they show what the fields were actually called, showed who owned them, who worked on them, what they were used for, arable, orchard, pasture, etc. Showed the size of each packet so you could see the field boundaries more clearly. Seeing those boundaries helps you detect where hedgerows may have been in the past, where gates, stiles and things may have existed as well. Knowing the usage of it gives you some indication of the likely footfall and working going on it, so whether or not it's going to be a busy field or a quiet field. Maybe it was used for leisure rather than just farming. All of those sort of things can be derived from what's in the tithe maps and the apportionments that go along with them. And of course, combining the tithe map and information on there with modern maps and other historical maps is key to giving you a really great rounded picture of the area that you're detecting on. On the right here, we've got two views of the same area. This is one of my own permissions. On the top, you've got a modern satellite view, and you can see two large fields. On the bottom, you've got an OS map from sort of early 1900, and you can see you've got a large bottom field, and then the top field is split into three. So you can already see 120 years ago that the bottom field, the top part of it was split into three different fields. So going back another 50 years to the tithe map will give us even more information about what was going on back 180 years ago. So checking your existing permissions or prospective permissions whilst we're all on lockdown using the tithe maps and the tithe apportionments represents a fantastic opportunity to get some more information on your land and detecting on it. So here's the same piece of land but now on the tithe map. Now this is the tithe map on the genealogist website using their Map Explorer view. Come more on that later on. But you can already see the top three fields which existed on the OS map. You've got a little bit more information now because the bottom field was also split into two back 180 years ago. You'll also notice that each of those parcels of land has a reference number on it, a 3-digit reference number, and those little red markers which are clickable on the genealogist's Map Explorer interface. That reference number is then used with the tithe apportionment record to identify that particular parcel of land. From there you can look up the landowner, the occupier, that's who's using it, usually a tenant farmer, what it was used for, what the field was called, the size of the field, and what tithe was then paid to the church. Tithe apportionments are in essence an early form of spreadsheet. Here's a picture of the very top of one so you can see the headers. As you read from left to right, you've got the landowner, the occupier, the plot number, so that's the reference number, the name and description of the field, type of cultivation, as I said, arable, pasture, meadow, orchard, occasionally garden, things like that. Then you've got the plot area, which is shown as acres, rods and perches, if I remember correctly, and then the taxation amount on the other side. So here you can see on the example I've worked through, the very top line you've got Henry Preston Esquire is the landowner, Jonathan Lord Ukes is the tenant farmer, plot number 9, First Nova Scotia Close is the field name, it was arable and it was just shy of 4 acres. So when I now look at the fields on my permission, the bottom 2 in particular, because they were newly split up, I've got 2 reference numbers, 121 and 122. When I look on the tithe apportionment for the area, I can see that 121 is the garth or a garth, and 122 is showing as the green. These probably represent more leisure use fields than they do farming, because garth is an old and archaic term for garden, and the green sort of implies this could be the village green, because the farm is right sort of next to where the village starts, so that could be the village green was used there. So these look like really good opportunities for detecting, because it looks like they may have had people in them doing things other than farming. So when we get our lockdown, these will be the first fields that I'll get back to once the crops are off and we're allowed out of our houses again. Hopefully we'll see some nice finds coming up that reflect the leisure usage of it. Of course, not all fields are as interesting as these two, and you will see a lot of more common field names like Ings and Close and those sort of things, which I will pick up on in a separate video, because I'm planning to do a video on field names next. So now I've whetted your appetite with how useful the tithe maps and apportionments are. Where do you find all this information? Well, the tithe maps were created for taxation regions, so they've been stored and they are now kept at the National Archives at Kew. So you can go to Kew and you can request to see them. You can also find a lot of them at your county records office as well. And again, you should be able to request to see them, sometimes a nominal fee, definitely usually a fee if you want to copy them or anything. If the record is held at Kew, then it also exists online on a site called The Genealogist, which we'll come on to in a minute. It's also worth checking to see whether or not your local area council or records office has put them online as well. For example, West Yorkshire Archives have put the Bradford tithe maps online recently, which are a good resource. So it's worth checking to see if yours and your area already exist online in some shape or form. If they don't, then the genealogist may be what you want to look at. And figuring that I wouldn't be the only detectorist at home, not being able to get out and wanting to maybe do some more research, I contacted the genealogist and asked them whether or not they could see their way clear to setting up a special offer for detectorists so that we could use our time productively and get to know our permissions a little bit better. Their normal subscription model for diamond level access, which you need to get access to the tithe information, is £140 a year, which I thought was probably going to be a bit steep for most people, myself included. So I asked them whether or not they could do something for sort of 3 or 4 months access, given that hopefully we'll be out of lockdown by then, but it'll give us time to get to the records and go through and find out what there is to find out about our permissions and everything that's there. So, a bit backwards and forwards, but we came up with a deal where for 4 months diamond level access, they'd offer a price of £39.95, which is the lowest they've ever offered as far as I'm aware. So if you follow the link in the description below, then you will go to the Team Rutus UK website, where I put together a little page which details the offer and has the link that you need to go through on to take advantage of the £39.95. The offer itself will auto-repeat after 4 months for the same price. If you want to carry on with it, you can. If you don't, it's nice and easy on the website to cancel it. There's no issues with that. And just because I like to be clear and upfront, I don't make any commission out of this. I just thought it'd be a good idea for the detecting community and give them something to do whilst we're all stuck at home. So hopefully you found this video useful, and hopefully you find the offer useful and you get to learn about your permissions a little bit more with the tithe maps and the tithe apportionments. Thanks for watching and listening.